Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant, the show where we answer your questions about home theater and all things audiovisual. And this episode is something of a landmark. It's episode 400.
that is a
Congratulations to
large
us.
number. Yes, that is a very large number, and we are very proud to have gotten this far, and it's only because of you listeners out there who have helped support this podcast in one form or another. Some of you have gone to www.avrant.com and pressed on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. That is one way to support the podcast, where you can give us a PayPal donation. Or you could be like Niclas H., our listener of the week this week, who has gone on a massive campaign to get AV Rant on TuneIn Radio, the service and app where you can listen to podcasts and other things. So thank you, Niclas, for your efforts. We'd like to commend you and recognize you and give you our title of Listener of the Week this week. So thank you, Niclas. Yay.
Thank you.
That's applause.
Yes, it's the one-hand clapping version of applause, but there it is.
That was two hands. I have two hands. What do you think I was doing? That's one. Okay, that sounds wrong. All right, so Niclas, thank you for being our listener of the week. This is the podcast where we answer your AV and home theater questions. We do our best to answer them all every week, but that requires you to send some in. You can do that by contacting Rob at avrant.com, Tom at avrant.com. Come to the website and comment. You can go to facebook.com/avrantpodcast. If you are a Twitterer type person, you can tweet us at Rob's at @FirstReflect, that's all one word, or you can tweet me at @avrant_Tom on Twitter. And I guess there's also G+, which, for those of you that use that. If you would like to see these podcasts recorded live, which, yeah, I'm going to get a new camera one of these days, and I'm also going to not be infirmed with my bum knee, which is... Today was a very bad day for my knee, so I will get all these things fixed eventually. I also like to get some real lights and maybe, I don't know, a whole bunch of stuff. Anyhow, one of these days I'll get some good lighting and some better everything, and we will have a decent picture for you guys to look at. But you can come on Tuesday nights Eastern Time in the U.S. At 9 p.m. We start our recordings-ish. Start usually sometimes a few minutes early, sometimes few minutes late, depends. We go until we're done, and then afterwards we will have a Google Hangout for up to 8 of you who have watched the podcast would like to interact with us directly. So that's how you can interact with us on a very specific and personal level. So, did I forget anything, Rob?
I do believe that's all the contact info, and yeah, we have a fairly good lineup of questions this week. Not quite as many as in weeks past. I haven't been worrying enough. You see, that's the problem. When I worried about it a whole bunch, we ended up with more than we could handle. So.
With CEDIA, people are, I guess, busy digesting all the information that's coming out of CEDIA. There's been a lot of stuff.
And also back to school time, I imagine, has a little something to do with it. Although not where I'm living, since all our teachers remain on strike. Yeah, what a mess that is. Probably going to go into October. So.
There's teachers on strike in Canada right now?
Oh, yes, indeed.
We're too busy blowing stuff up down here or worry about who we might or may not blow up to worry about whether or not you guys get yourselves educated. So, sorry about that. Sorry about our myopic view. Anyhow, so this weekend, speaking of myopic, this weekend I agreed months and months ago, long before I decided that I needed to get my knee fixed and my ACL repaired, that I would do a presentation for a local writers group, the Romance Writers Association. The local group is called TARA. It's the Tampa Area Romance Association, something like that. Anyhow, they asked if I would do a presentation on how to use social media and what social media was, and there was all different levels of users in there, people who are very active tweeters and understand all that stuff, all the way to people who didn't know what a hashtag was. So I spent like 5 hours on Saturday doing this presentation, which would have been fine if I hadn't had to take a Vicodin halfway through just to keep myself from screaming.
Just the other side of a Vicodin dose right there.
Yeah. So it ended up going pretty well. I had a good time, but it was very interesting to see, And so we might have some of our viewers might show up from that just to see what this whole Google Hangout thing is about. So we'll see if that ends up being a thing that happens.
Yeah, if you ever want to mess up a young person, just call a hashtag, either a £, or the proper name, which is the Octothorpe. That is one of my favorite names. That is the official name of that symbol, the Octothorpe. Yeah, go ahead and call it that. See if anyone knows what that is.
As a reminder, we talked a little bit last week, but we're gonna have a couple of interviews getting set up pretty soon. We've got Josh Pollard and Richard Gunther from the Digital Media Zone. They're going to be joining us for an episode or two.
Depends on if they come on together or separately. So.
Oh, is that the case? How is it? Okay, we have to start running this by the higher ups before we start making 1 or 2 episodes with people I don't know. I'm sure they're very nice gentlemen. Anyways, yes. They are all about home theater PCs, smartphones, tablets, home integration, home automation, that sort of stuff. So if you've got some questions about that sort of thing, now's the time to get them into us. I just sent out an email to Chris. I hope I'm saying this right. Kyriakakis. Anyways.
Kyriakakis, I think
Kyriakakis?
it is. I think that's how it is.
Kyriakakis? I don't know. Anyways, he's with Odyssey. He's been our main contact with Odyssey for years and years. He's a great guy. I've talked to him in person a couple of times. We've got a couple of questions. One from Jason, one from Tony. I guess I don't know if they're all questions, but they're just the things that they'd like to have answered. Plus, we have many of our own. And this is all about Odyssey. So if you want to know anything about Odyssey, and yes, we will verify again that the 0dB thing is just complete bupkis. We will be verifying that.
Had another anecdote just today, so.
Yeah, I don't care about that. It's crap. Guys are stupid.
It was the worst kind of anecdote because there were definitely more than one variable changed. So.
I'm telling you. Yeah. Okay. So.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, anyways, we're going to be talking with him pretty soon. Hopefully, we'll set up that interview. I don't know that's something we're going to do over the Google Hangout. I think instead we'll probably do that over Skype call, keep that separate, and then you'll be able to just listen to that on the downloadable podcast. It will not be part of the. I guess I could probably figure out a way to do it for the AV listeners, but we'll see. Anyhow, all right. So, what we'll be talking about today, Steve. I guess Steven over on Facebook posted a couple of pictures and has a good subwoofer story for you guys. And Andy's got some videos that he suggests you watch if you have problems falling asleep. Barney was interested in Trinov's updates from CEDIA. Niclas wants to hear and actually Niclas is our listener of the week, and we don't have to talk about that because we already said that anyway, so he wants to hear us on TuneIn Radio. Infinite Gary's got lots of questions because it's Infinite Gary, and that's what he does. And we won't bump you, Gary, I promise, but maybe a little bit. Kevin L wants bang for his buck recommendations for a new 5.1 setup. He's already got some stuff, but wants to know what he should upgrade. And would anybody like to take bets on what our suggestion's going to be? Anybody? Anybody who's ever listened to this podcast before is going to guess. I swear, if you ever wanted to be validated in buying a specific item for your home theater, this is definitely the podcast to go to. We are your go-to guys for validation for this one product. Michael M. found us helpful. Yay! And has a crossover and a vinyl question, which we have answers for. Bruno's building a dedicated home theater. We talked to him a little bit We talked a little bit about him last week, I believe. But he might have a projector placement hurdle to face and doesn't know what to do. Cameron fears what an SVS sub might do to his doors. I think that's a valid fear. And it asks about binding post jumpers. And Sim, that's a name, I guess. It's not like a video game guy. Sim has subwoofer placement questions. Okay. There's tons of news out of CEDIA right now. We probably won't talk much about it because we've got other things to talk about. But the things that are, of course, most interesting, I think everybody agrees, is that the laser projector from Epson is very fascinating.
That seems to be a big news thing.
It's also fascinating that instead of having 4K, they have pseudo 4K. It's 1080p with a extra pixel that they kind of generate.
Yeah, I mean, it's just 1080p, and then they wobble the panel.
Yeah.
They flick it back and forth diagonally so that the same pixel ends up overlapping with itself and the adjacent pixel, and kind of creates 4 pixels out of only 2.
Very exciting. Anyways, There's some other stuff. Revell has a new subwoofer, the B1, which is kind of interesting. JL Audio has the Dominion series, which is going to be their least expensive, though it's got the best name. So the Dominion series subs, I think I think the most expensive out of that entire group is like a 10-inch gloss black one for $10.99. So it's pretty cheap, though they don't have extremely impressive performance, but for their size, they pretty much do. They may be our new go-to small sub recommendation for now. I mean, it's going to be hard to beat them at that size and price. I mean, basically, JL Audio just says, we have a really big driver and a box that barely fits around it.
Yep. Now how much amplifier power can we cram in there? And off it goes.
Yeah, and the answer is a lot. I'm trying to think of what are some of the other interesting. Atmos, of course, was all over the place. The one thing that was very interesting, I think pretty universally, Atmos was sort of a hit or miss. Some people really liked it. Some people, thought, some setups were better than others, that sort of thing. So Dolby Atmos, it certainly seems to be doing something. People are impressed that the sense of spaciousness and envelopment is certainly increased. I'm personally disheartened by the fact that a lot of people are saying that they thought that the bouncy speakers were better than the direct ones, which tells me they're doing something wrong someplace. Because there's no way, it doesn't make any sense that bouncing stuff off the ceiling would sound better than having a speaker on your ceiling. It just doesn't make intuitive sense, so someone needs to explain that to me in a way that makes sense to me. But I thought that one thing that's really, really interesting is that there's a real big push down there, or there was during CEDIA this year, for Play-Fi. Which Play-Fi is, I don't think it started off in the DTS camp, but it certainly lives. I think the DTS bought it. I might be wrong about that. They may have initially started it, but I thought it started someplace else and DTS bought it. And Play-Fi basically is sort of like AirPlay, except it works with everything. And I've noticed, because I've had Play-Fi for a while, and it's a wireless streaming. I've had access to it for a long time, and I've noticed as months have gone on, because I probably had it for about a year in my house, that it just keeps adding devices. And one day it showed up on my iTunes. I was like, what? I can stream to that? Yeah, you can start streaming to those to all the Play-Fi speakers directly from your iTunes. And when that happened, I was like, hello, AirPlay. Why do I need you again? Now, there may be some differences in sound quality and stuff like that between AirPlay and Play-Fi. I don't know. I haven't seen the direct comparisons there. But there are a lot of people moving that way. I think both, I want to say Def Tech and Polk Audio both put out entire Play-Fi systems that were almost identical. Like, they were in different enclosures, but and the power, like the wattage on the amp thing was slightly different, but it was like they both put out like a sound bar, 2 individual speakers, an amplifier, and like a streaming box. And I think and the subwoofer and the sound bar, both of the sound bars had subwoofers. So I don't know if those 2 companies are owned by the same parent company, but dang, it looks like they kind of went together on that one.
Yeah, not as far as I know. Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I mean clearly the move here is towards greater and greater customer base for whole home audio. Clearly Sonos has sort of led the way in this category, and now it looks like everyone's figuring out some way of catching up. I mean the Play-Fi thing is based on Wi-Fi,
yes.
Whereas Sonos is their own closed network that only the Sonos products are working on that network, and you kind of have to look for something that can attach to it. Like Harmony had to work hand in hand with Sonos, Logitech had to work hand in hand to get the Harmony remotes to work with that. So Sonos is this closed thing, but that has some advantages in that usually the signal is less prone to picking up interference, and usually the area over which it can transmit is a little bit larger than Wi-Fi. But Play-Fi obviously has the advantage of just working on a very widely available network standard. So that's going to be interesting to see. Denon had their Hios system as well, which is more expensive than Sonos. And as far as I know, that one's a proprietary one, right? That's not part of the Play-Fi network, as far as I know.
Oh, it's not part of Play-Fi for sure. I don't know. I don't know what they're using. I thought they were using just something over Wi-Fi too, though. But I might be wrong about that. It's been a while. I wrote that. I wrote something about that a long time ago. I don't really remember what it was. I have noticed that Helios is now being advertised on places like Pandora and Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Those ads have started showing up in my streams when I've been listening to music. So it's certainly something that they're going to start pushing. I just don't see that succeeding. But maybe. Who knows?
So,
All right.
I mean, for me, honestly, I just wanted to mention out of CEDIA because normally CEDIA is where we get all our front projector news. That's where almost everybody announces their new projector models and where we're going to see the most innovations. And, you know, the Epson story with their, what was the model? LS 10,000? Is that?
It's the 10,000, yeah. The LS 10,000, yeah.
Yeah, the LS 10,000. I mean, that seemed to garner most of the headlines. You know, it's supposed to come out for under 8,000. Everyone's speculating that means $79.99.
That's what I said on my when I wrote it up. I was like, under 8,000. That's 0.99 cents too, I imagine. But go on.
But you know, the interesting part of it is that it's a new panel chip technology because Epson, of course, has long been in the LCD business as far as front projectors go. But this is now liquid crystal on quartz. It's a reflective technology, seemingly very similar to liquid crystal on silicon, which is what JVC and Sony are both using, but they're using a quartz backplane instead of a silicon backplane as the reflective layer. So this is the first time we're really seeing that in the home market from Epson. And then, of course, it's using these two blue lasers as its light source. One blue laser just providing the blue part of the light, and then the other one is being used to excite a yellow phosphor. And then that yellow phosphor is providing the green and red light, and then there are 3 of these liquid crystal on quartz chips inside of there. So it's a 3-chip projector. It's using 2 lasers as its light source, which Epson is claiming will last about 30,000 hours.
Which is pretty amazing.
Improves on the like 3,000 hour life that we're used to with lamps, and then pretty good brightness out of those too. So you know, all of these things are piling up to say, you know, this
and not only that, they're claiming that the black levels are the lumen. There's 0 lumens in black. 0.
Yeah,
that
because
means
they can just turn the lasers off.
They turn the lasers off, and there's no. I mean, that's essentially you get the contrast ratio is infinity. You know, because it's 0 is 0, man. You can't get any blacker than that, and when
that's
you
right.
the vision, that's what you end up with. Or,
but we're looking at all of this and the price point, and it's clear that they're going after a higher price market than they have previously. You know, previously it was like the 5030 UB was sort of their upper level for the home market, and that topped out at, you know, in sort of the $3,000, $3,500 price range. So they're going after a slightly higher market, which, you know, for the past few years, JVC has sort of dominated that price class, and in terms of performance and black levels too. So what actually struck me was that JVC this year at CEDIA said, we're not releasing any new projectors this year. The ones that came out last year, we're just continuing on with those. And I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. I mean, a lot of people are speculating basically they're just waiting for 4K to really arrive in full force, and for the HDMI chipsets that can do HDMI 2.0 with HDCP 2.2 copy protection at the same time. They're pretty much just waiting on those things to arrive, and then they'll probably have new models next year. But, you know, to me it was like, whoa, nothing new from JVC, nothing new from Panasonic, hasn't been for a couple of years. So it looks like they might be just completely out of the front projector market. And then the only one who's really making an aggressive push is Sony. You know, Sony announced their VPL 300, which is the lowest priced genuine 4K panel that you can get for the home market, coming in under their VPL 500 model that they had last year, which was at the time the cheapest genuine 4K chips. So, you know, Sony's clearly putting their money on 4K, which makes a lot of sense. They make the cameras and they make the cinema projectors that are 4K. So, you know, they're like, yes, let us push forth with 4K. But it's like Epson, Sony, that's about it, which is kind of a shock.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'm really excited about this $8,000 projector because I think in a year or two it's going to be like a $2,000 projector because it's 1080p, and I think this time next year we're going to see a 4K, a true 4K, and then this one's going to be, you know, basically bargain basement. And
I mean, there was the home version of the LS10000, which I think is the 9600, and that one's supposed to be even less expensive. That one does not do the pseudo 4K thing. It doesn't wobble its panel. It's just
which
a 1080p
I am perfectly
projector.
fine with. Thank you very
kidding.
much. You can keep your wobbles to yourself, sir. That's what I'd say. All right. So some exciting news coming out of CEDIA. Not nearly as much stuff as we're used to, but it is what it is. All right. So first, let's start with Steven over on Facebook. He bought an SVS cylinder sub, just the ones that look like water coolers, black. covered in velour or whatever it is, with usually a grill on the top and a downward firing driver that fires into a little plate. He bought an SBS cylinder sub to pair up with a PB12 Plus he already had, which is a different. That's a box sub.
Yeah, that would be a ported box.
Yeah, that's a big one. Knowing his wife would not like another big subwoofer in the living room, he hid it in his garage for a few days before realizing that the white paper tube that's part of the packaging might actually camouflage the subwoofer in the room. And it took his wife 2 whole days before she even noticed that white round thing behind the sofa. His room is open to many other parts of the house, and it's been a nightmare to pressurize, but it's Denon AVR X4000. Yeah, good stuff. I like that one. And I have the same one I have to sorry. It's still in the box of my bedroom, and it makes me sad every time I see it. I want my home theater back.
No
My
kidding.
parents got granite in their kitchen today, so that's exciting. They still don't have a bedroom, but they have a granite in their kitchen, and it's getting very close to the kitchen, and they've been painting and stuff like that. So it's getting. There's 2 phases in the renovation, and phase 1 is almost done. So I'm excited. Okay, but his Denon AVR X4000 did its Odyssey Multi-Q XT32 with sub EQ HT set up in about 12 minutes, and now his space is non-localizable and not enough that he has to secure a bunch of pictures and glassware with putty. Huh! Victory! That's his words, victory, or your words.
No, he did proclaim victory in all of this.
It's a big open room that's open to the rest of the house. I can see why he's.
I love the picture that he posted on Facebook of his camouflaged cylinder sub, because I mean, we could look at it and we're like, oh yeah, there it is. But I mean, it is well camouflaged just by putting white paper around it.
It's funny that it's behind a lamp, though. I think it's like a little bush back there, like a little tree and like a lamp, and it's kind of hiding back there. Well, okay, so this is one of those things where like, okay, so like I said, there's a grill on top, and that's where the top ports fire. And on the bottom, there's the subwoofer driver is mounted to the bottom, and it's pushed off the ground and held. The bottom is actually a plate, so like a round wooden base, which has got like some spacers on it. Well, as long as you're not covering that opening for those for that plate, around that plate at the bottom, and you're not covering anything on the top, well then it doesn't. You're not going to affect performance. Ask them to give it to you in white, and they might have done that for you. So, that would have been another option. I don't know. Maybe he took the black thing off because there is sort of a blackish, like drape there that looks like he.
It might be worth him just getting in touch with SBS and seeing, because he's probably still within the 45-day window.
Yeah.
So if they do have some way of making a cylinder white, why the heck not?
A little spray paint, man, and some different, some white velour. I mean, I'm sure that exists. Andy E shared a link to some videos from the Southeastern Michigan Woofer and Tweeter Marching Society.
That is their name, dude. I just copied it directly from their website.
Marching. That doesn't make any sense.
I don't know.
All right. Andy says the presentation and the discussions might be a little dry sometimes, but they're also very enlightening and come from some of the smartest people in the audio industry than Rob and myself. He particularly liked the He particularly liked the presentation of the KEF LS50 bookshelf speaker, which we'll have some links to. I listened to a couple of. I saw a couple of them. It's mostly them recording. It seems like. Meetings that they've had where they have discussions about stuff, and I kind of appreciate. I listened to a couple of them. One of them was kind of making fun of this whole idea of cable risers, where people take and they put stuff on the ground to keep your speaker cables from touching the carpet because of static electricity getting in there, like gremlins and stuff. So I kind of liked they were making fun of that, and they were talking about ABX and other things that I approve of. So yeah, good.
Yeah, I just glanced through the list of videos that they have. They're definitely covering a wide range of worthwhile topics. So yeah, I did not watch them all by any means.
You did not, no. So if you want to, we haven't done that. So if there's anyone that you're particularly interested in having your opinion on, let us know, Andy or anybody else. Oh, and the KEF LS, it was like a 12-minute thing, and I listened to not quite enough of it to give you a comment. All right, so we got some comments and updates here. Barney was interested. He mentioned that Trinnov released more information about their Altitude 32 processor during CEDIA. This is their processor that allows them to locate speakers in your room and then set up speakers and then use DSPs to make the speakers seem like they come from different places. So if you have non-optimal placement of your speakers, then the Trinnov system fixes that. Specifically, Trinnov is referring to Dolby Atmos versus Oro 3D audio as a format war, and using the incompatible speaker layouts between the two formats is an illustration of why we need their speaker remapping technology. Let's just stop there for a second. It's not a format war, okay?
No, it's not.
No. Dolby Atmos is going to come to every single home theater AV processor within the next year. Everyone will have it. You know, maybe not the entry-level stuff, but every manufacturer will have something from Atmos, all the major ones at least. Oro 3D will not be in any. I mean, maybe they'll start popping up in a year or two in like flagships because they just don't seem to have the market penetration. I looked them up on the Oro 3D website. They say that they have 4 theaters in the entire United States that have that are Oro 3D compatible. On their website, they list a number of movies that are Oro 3D that are encoded in Oro 3D. But when you go to Amazon, you can't. It doesn't show anything about it being Oro 3D, which certainly they would have listed along with all the other stuff that they are. So I'm thinking that if you want something like that, you have to order it directly from Oro 3D or get it from overseas or something. Because the most, like, easily 50% of the movies are Indian, which I got no problems with Indian movies, but you know I don't know why Oro 3D is so big in India, but apparently it's bigger there than it is here. So it's not a format war, dude. It's like, you know, just like I'm trying to think of what a good example of that is. It's just like somebody walking into a biker bar and calling, saying that bikers are wussies is in any way a gang fight. What it is one person's getting a beat down. That's what that is. That's not a war. That's not a fight. It's nothing yet. Or 3D is definitely different. Barney also pointed out, though, that if you're only worried about one of these formats and you're actually able to position your speakers according to their guidelines, then Trinnov remapping really doesn't do anything. If you're okay with only 11 speakers, then you can save about $48,000. Because the Oro 3D, the Trinnov system is like ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, yeah. If you want the 8-channel version, which clearly is not any more speakers than a 7.1 receiver, that's starting at about $30,000. And then if you want the full-bore 32-channel version, which that's subwoofers inclusive, by the way. So one thing I did enjoy is that in the updated information that they have on their website now, they do say with the Altitude 32, you can use anywhere between 0 and 32 subwoofers. You could dedicate the entire thing to driving nothing but subwoofers if you so choose. So it is very flexible in what you would like to do with it, as many of those 32 channels as you would like can be subwoofer channels. But yeah, I mean, the tricky thing here is that Oro 3D, like Dolby Atmos, has very specific placement guidelines for where the speakers are meant to go, and they are not the same places as Dolby Atmos, of course. Of course they are not.
But honestly, they're infinitely better than Dolby Atmos. Dolby Atmos placement recommendations are like, require like math and calculus, and I think really they should release some sort of device that you put in the middle of your room, and then it shoots out lasers to all the places where speakers should be.
Well, sure. Just every 15 degrees, there's a
these are all the places that you like program it. Like I'm gonna have 9.4.7. Okay, and it shows you all the places that it should be. Oro 3D is infinitely easier. It's you have 5 or 7.1.
Yep.
5 or 7 speakers that go around you, right? So if you have 5, you have 2 on the sides, a little bit behind you, but on the sides. You have your 3 up front, right? So that's 5. You have 7. You add 2 more in the back, right? Okay, that's 7. Well, Oro 3D is basically start stacking them. If you're sitting pretty close, you can put one on top. Okay, not right on top, but above, right? And then they have the voice of God speaker that goes right above you, so there's one on the ceiling. Now, if your walls are far enough away, when you put one on top, you still have room for another one. Well, you put in the room for another one on top of those, but you still only have one ceiling speaker. That's the one that's right on top of. So Oro 3D is, I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. Whereas Dolby Atmos literally requires you to get a custom installer to come in there because it's just too much math.
Well, one thing is that the Oro 3D speaker setup doesn't have to be drastically different from an Atmos setup because Oro says if you want to experience Oro sound in your home, they would recommend the minimum being their 9.1 speaker setup. And that would be your traditional 5-speaker setup, your 3 across the front, your 2 surrounds to either side of you. They say 110 degrees, from straight ahead center, so to your sides and slightly behind you. And then to have front height speakers that are 30 to 40 degrees directly above your front left and right speakers, and Atmos can use those positions too, so they could share those. And then Oro wants the other 2 speakers to be directly above your surround speakers. Now that's different from Atmos. Atmos would have height speakers directly above your surround back speakers. So it's a little bit different, but not insanely different. And then if you had top middle speakers for your Atmos setup, those could serve as your voice of God speaker in Oro. So with just a little bit of finagling, they don't really have to be all that different. The only one that's completely different in Oro is they have a center height speaker, a speaker that is 30 to 40 degrees directly above the center speaker. That's really the only completely different one. So, the Trinnov speaker remapping should totally be able to work on this if you're going that way.
No one's going that way. No one's going that way because there's no Oro 3D content. I mean, there's barely any Dolby Atmos.
That's right.
There's some coming.
There's one
for sure.
Blu-ray.
There's some coming, but they announced one, right? What was the one they announced?
Transformers,
Transformers, right?
Extinction, yes.
Yeah, and then you're forced to watch that more than once, just so you can.
Should avoid it if you enjoy your sanity.
Okay, so and then there's absolutely nothing for Oro 3D, even though they say there's stuff, but there's not really. I mean, I think it was encoded for theaters, but not for the home. I don't really know what's going on with that. All right, so Infinite Gary's got a whole bunch of topics here, so let's just start plowing through them. Now we have pretty much all the details about Dolby Atmos, and it's pretty clear that DTS UHD won't be coming until next year at the earliest. What could DTS UHD offer that would make consumers prefer it over Atmos? What can it do that Atmos can't? Well, the number one thing that DTS UHD is promising to do is not care where your speakers are.
Yes.
That's the number one thing. And the reason that I think consumers would prefer it over to Atmos is because it actually will do something for you without you having to have more than 5 speakers, theoretically. Okay? So if you've got your 5 speakers and they're like non-optimally placed for one reason or another, DTS UHD should be able to compensate or should know where those speakers are and say, okay, that one's higher than the other one. That surround is higher than the other one. That surround is got a different type than the other one. I have to compensate in this way to make that sound good. Or this one's further back. One surround's further back, or one front speaker's got a big empty room to the side, and the other one's got a glass window. I have to compensate for all that. That's what DTS UHD should be able. That's why consumers might prefer it. Now, the fact that it can then also add more speakers to your system, so that you can get. You're like, okay, well, I wired for Oro 3D, and that completely died. So now I've got these speakers that aren't good for, aren't optimally placed for Atmos, but DTS UHD doesn't care. It will deal with them where they are. I think better yet, honestly, I don't know how many people I know who bought houses that had quote unquote whole home audio in it, and they've got these in-ceiling speakers that are off-white, usually Bose, that are just sitting up there in their home theater or their living rooms where their theater, they're setting up theaters in there, and there's just these 2 speakers sitting overhead, not doing anything. And they're like, well, I don't really use them because I use my regular speakers, and why would I use those? Well, now you could. Now you could hook them up to your home theater system, and your DTS UHD would go, all right, well those kind of suck, but I can work with that. I can work with that and give you sort of an overhead surround experience as well. And I think that's what it is. The thing is that DTS UHD is promising to be a lot more flexible and a lot easier to use than Dolby Atmos, which requires some sort of master's degree, I think, in Atmos.
Well, I think the implication of DTS UHD is that it might be a completely object-based sound format. The idea would be that every sound that you're hearing would have attached to it a set of X, Y, Z coordinates. And then it wouldn't matter so much. I mean, it would have to be within reason, of course. You can't just put 5 speakers all behind your head and magically make it sound like they're coming from in front of you.
Yamaha can do that. Except the other way around.
Yes, indeed. But the idea would be that if every sound just has XYZ coordinates attached to it, then theoretically it wouldn't matter where you place your speakers. They can just attempt to steer the sound out of wherever your speakers are to make it come from the correct XYZ coordinates in 3-dimensional space. That's the cool theory of it. My biggest concern is, how are they going to actually implement that? How are they going to get the information of where your speakers are physically placed? That is going to require, I mean, I suppose they could have a manual entry, tell us the angles, tell us the azimuth and elevation angles of your speakers, but I don't see that as being terribly user-friendly. The obvious choice would be to have a 3-dimensional microphone like what Trinnov uses or what Yamaha uses for their 3D version of Wipeout, where you take one microphone and then move it around a fixed stand into 4 different positions so it can triangulate azimuth and elevation angles. That would seem to be the way to go, but that would require every AV receiver manufacturer who would support it to really introduce a new automatic microphone speaker setup system. That is not a trivial thing for them to do, and it's not something that you could just implement with a firmware update to existing receiver models. That would be a new purchase if that's the way they're going to do it.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, think about how Yamaha does it. They have that little Nerf thing.
Yeah.
Where you take the same microphone, you put it in 3 locations. Those locations are determined by the little. It looks like one of those Nerf boomerangs. Those 3-pronged Nerf boomerangs. It's exactly what it looks like. And if you can do that with the existing microphones and stuff they have now. They just have to have some way of making sure that it's doing all the calculations.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the even bigger hurdle is that I still don't know of a single soundtrack that has been mastered in DTS UHD. I've never heard of such a thing. I'm sure that exists in a lab in prototype form. It must, but nothing has ever been released in a theater in DTS MDA or UHD format. So even if they get all the technology part of it down, what is their content going to be? Maybe they'll end up being a Dolby licensee and say, hey, we can take an Atmos soundtrack and apply our version of decoding to it. That would be one potential way they could come at things, but that would mean they would have to pay Dolby to do that. So that seems kind of unlikely.
One thing that Dolby has a history of putting out formats and they stick. We've had the Dolby noise reduction and all the other the Prologics and all that stuff. It's not that I am in any way saying that Dolby is not going to be a viable format. I think it's going to be here, and we're just going to be stuck with it whether we like it or not. The question is really to be asked and answered is DTS going to come, and is it going to be a viable contender? Okay, so will DTS UHD come, and will it be a viable contender to Atmos? Well, the DTS format, the DTS surround format, came a year after Dolby's surround format, and still ended up getting a very large presence. And I think that if this time next year, if CEDIA next year, if we're not talking about DTS hitting the market, and what will and won't, which receivers will and won't have DTS UHD, then I'll be worried. If this time next year that we're not talking about what's going to have DTS in it because they've made a bunch of announcements, then I'm going to start being worried that this is vaporware. Until then, I'm going to give DTS the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see. I don't the hardware, the processing perhaps, but I don't see anything really, especially after using Yamaha's reflected sound control. I don't see anything that makes me think that they can't do it with. They can't do this basically this coordination of where speakers are with the existing technology. I think they can do it with what we're currently using.
Maybe.
Because Yamaha's certainly doing it.
Yeah, I think the bigger trick, going back to the Oro 3D thing, Audioholics just posted a good interview with the founder of Oro 3D, and I mean, right in there, he says very clearly, Oro 3D is based around these fixed speaker positions. No ifs, ands, or buts. That is where they go. That is the way to do it. In their opinion, and DTS, from everything they've said so far, is the polar opposite of that. Put your speakers where you can, we'll figure out the rest. To me, that sounds a lot more appealing to consumers. I really don't think people are looking to add more speakers and be extremely limited.
The commercials write themselves, really.
Yeah, exactly.
They absolutely do. The commercials write themselves. You're like, somebody's setting up their home theater, and they're like, you could just see somebody like in their home. Like, I don't know where to put the speaker. I'm supposed to put it there, but I can't put it there. And somebody says, "Oh no, you have DTS. You have the new DTS UHD. Just put it anywhere." It sells itself, man. I'm telling you, it sells itself. All right, let's go on. Gary was thinking back to an older episode of Home Theater Geeks, number 178, where Anthony Grimani from MSR Acoustics and PMI said that the subwoofer crawl, unfortunately, doesn't actually work very well. He explained how moving the subwoofer to the seated position changes the wave pattern and pressurization versus when the subwoofer is somewhere along the perimeter of the room, and therefore doesn't actually sound the same when you switch places. Since we recommend doing the subwoofer crawl so many times, what are our thoughts on this explanation? How old is this episode? Is it old? Or
it's not that old. It's going back a few months now. But it's not
just months? Okay.
Old.
Yeah. So, basically, yeah, he's not right. I mean, okay, so this is the idea. Okay, so if there is a null where your chair is, and you put your subwoofer in that null, then the null will those frequencies will be canceled out, and you won't be hearing it as you're doing the subwoofer crawl. That's my understanding from what he said, what his little graphic was talking about, and that therefore all you can really do is just randomly place your subwoofer around the room and listen and hope, and then move the subwoofer again and listen and hope, and move the subwoofer again and listen and hope, because the subwoofer crawl, if you put it on the chair, it doesn't actually work. I mean, I don't agree with that. No one else says that. In fact, I did a search to kind of try to figure out if anybody agreed with him or was saying the same thing, and no one is saying that. All the subwoofer manufacturers say the same thing. All the experts in the area said the same thing. We've tested it and seen. Personally, I don't know anybody in this industry who has not done the subwoofer crawl and found out that it did in fact work. They all agree that it works. So this one guy says, "Oh well, you put it there and it doesn't work." I don't think he's under. I mean, I'm not saying he's not very smart and that he's not very, that there isn't some science behind what he's saying. But what I'm saying is that he is in this case either mistaken, or he's throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying, "Okay, well, it's not, that's not the optimal way to do it. The only way to be absolutely sure is just to move it all the way around your room over and over again." Well, that might be true, but the optimal way to do it is to get a supercomputer and a bunch of robots and lasers and stuff like that in there to measure everything, to know exactly what the absorptive qualities of every single item is in your room, and the humidity levels and the air and everything else that goes along with that, and then say absolutely without a doubt, to the millimeter, that's where the best place for your sub is, as long as you're not sitting in the room. Because as soon as you get in your room, you're going to mess everything up anyways. So I don't agree with this guy.
No, I think this is a case where he got a little bit hamstrung by the fact that this came up at the very end of the podcast, and they were wrapping things up, and he didn't have a chance to fully explain what he meant. And I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate, a little bit of defense here, but I think what he was getting at is the idea of real optimization. I mean, really, really digging into this is the absolute best spot versus this spot is better than this one. Right? The subwoofer crawl to me is all about a practical application. I'm not going to tell you that the subwoofer crawl is going to find you the absolute 100% best possible spot for a subwoofer in your room. I'm going to tell you that if you have 3 spots in your room where your subwoofer might live, it will reveal to you which of those 3 is better than the other 2. And to me, that's incredibly valuable information. It doesn't have to be perfect. Mathematically, he's correct. There's for the second harmonics in your room, putting your subwoofer in your seat, if it happens to fall in the null of that second harmonic, it is going to pressurize that null in that location, and then that is going to work. That's one frequency. It's saying that because one frequency doesn't work during the subwoofer crawl, we shouldn't use it at all? That doesn't make sense. There are many, many other frequencies where it does work, where the reciprocity does still work with you switching places with your subs. So, yeah, I totally agree. It's a throw the baby out with the bathwater type of, argument. To me, one of the bigger issues is that any of us who have tried to give advice to our friends or our family as to suggesting that, yes, subwoofer placement makes a very large difference in the performance at your seat, a lot of times people just need convincing. And getting them to do the subwoofer crawl is incredibly convincing because as they crawl around the perimeter of their room, it's undeniable how much the frequency response of a bass sweep changes. In one place it sounds like a roller coaster, and one place it sounds almost uniform and linear. And it's like, you get that example and you go, oh yeah, it does totally make a difference. Let's put it over here where it sounded more uniform and flat versus this other place where it sounded like a roller coaster. So that would be my take on it. I would still always recommend doing the subwoofer crawl.
Yeah. This comes up every once in a while with somebody's got to say, oh no, that's not the best way to do it, or that's not it doesn't really work the way that people say. And this is what it comes down to. If it's 85% correct, is that correct enough for you? If it's 90% correct, is that correct enough for you? Does it have to be 100% correct? Does it have to be 100% accurate? Because for 100% accurate, you're not even going to get. I guarantee you get a custom installer in there. They're crawling. They're not. If they can't convince you to buy 2 subs.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Then they're going to be crawling because that's the best, easiest way to narrow down the options of where to put stuff. And we're not looking for those a couple of frequencies. We're looking for overall. What's the flattest overall? What's the evenest overall? It's not going to be like, oh well, they're all exactly the same except for one might be better in the second harmonics, but I can't hear those second harmonics because where we put it in the chair. Well, whatever, dude. Just that doesn't never happen. That never happens. Never happens. So, all right. Gary also came across Anthony Grimani's, whatever, latest venture, Grimani Systems, which is his own high-end brand of self-powered speakers for the custom install market. Of course, it is. Just by going by the information available from the CD Pro press release and the Grimani Systems website, what do we think of the design of these speakers? Would we be interested in them for our own dedicated theater if we could afford them? I would never spend $300,000 on speakers. I can't conceive of me having enough money to think that $300,000 on speakers is a decent. I can't imagine.
I mean, there's it's a whole system that's coming for that.
I don't much care, dude.
Yeah.
So basically, what his speakers are essentially wall. They look like they're supposed to be wall mounted, or at least
absolutely,
right against a wall. They're all self-powered, and they have like DSPs and stuff in them. They're all IP based. You run like an Ethernet cable to them, I imagine, and then maybe not to each speaker. Maybe it's to the control unit, and there's a coax cable that you run, or Cat6 cable that you run to each individual speaker. No, so it's just a Cat6 to each speaker. And then each speaker gets has its own internal amplifier and DSP and stuff like that, and they're all IP assignable. So basically, from a custom install, this is a dream because they can get information back from the speakers and say, okay, well, there's a tweeter blown in this one, that's why it sounds weird. or this one seems awfully loud compared to the volume levels isn't what we initially set these at, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of information they can gain that way.
And they could potentially change those DSP settings remotely.
Yes.
They don't actually have to come to your house. They can do it over the internet.
Yeah, they'll still charge you for that though.
Oh, of course.
So they have a tweeter design which is familiar if you've ever seen Bang & Olufsen speakers. They have this sort of it looks like a double like a I don't know what would you call that, a double pyramid coming together at the center, and the tweeters kind of in there firing into this little it has a name for that type of driver. What's it called? I can't remember. That waveguide.
It's a horn, man.
It's a horn-loaded. It's a horn-loaded tweeter, but it's got a point that comes from the top and a point that comes up from the bottom. It's the same thing that Bang & Olufsen uses in their high-end ones. It's got a name, and I'm going to look it up here in a second. But they brag about the fact that they're using the same thing as it's called a conic section array. CSI. Okay. Whatever. I would never have remembered that. Anyways, Bang & Olufsen uses the same thing on their high-end speakers. It helps, spread the high-end information out, makes it a little bit more diffuse. They have a bunch of big ol' woofers that are involved in them. It's just a hugely expensive system. I'm sure it sounds amazing. I especially for home theater. I don't necessarily think that off the bat I would think that this would sound that great for music, but it's hard to say that it wouldn't. But it's suitable for rooms up to 20,000 cubic feet.
Mm-hmm.
It has 13 speakers, 16,000 watts of power, 29 channels of amplification, and 10 DSP units feeding each of those 29 amp channels separately. Okay, so it is just a highly configurable system. It's ugly as sin, obviously meant to be behind, acoustic screens and stuff.
And the cabinets are made out of plastic and MDF. I love that for close to $400,000.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you can call me one of those get off my lawn kind of guys if you'd like. I'm okay with that. But if I buy speakers, if I'm buying a home theater. I mean, if I had enough money to have a dedicated true theater with 30, 40, 50 seats, fine. Something like this, I could see it. But anything where I'm actually like I am now, where I'm sitting down with 5 or 6 of my friends, we're watching a movie, I want to see the speakers. I want the speakers to be something that's part of the experience. I don't want to be hidden behind a wall.
Wouldn't know what to do with you, Tom.
Exactly. I'm I don't want there to be this sort of. I don't want to have a Batman cave. I don't want to have a Star Trek Enterprise, whatever the top deck thing of that is. The bridge. That's the word I was looking for. Drugs. I'm on drugs. Don't forget about that, guys. Vicodin, killing brain cells as we speak. So I mean, I want the speakers to be part of it, and having speakers hidden behind walls and stuff like that is not what I'm interested in. At least not in a theater that's anything less than almost almost professional size. You know what I mean? I want something that's where the speakers are part of the experience. So yeah, I'm not interested in these speakers. I'm sure they sound fine. I'm sure they sound great. I'm sure they sound very loud, and that's the thing. I mean, he's trying to put these things in huge theaters.
Yes.
Even the small sort of room that they sort of show you as being the demo, not the demo, but the one they kind of lay out for you on their website has 2 sets of surround speakers on each side, and they're just wired in series. So it's the same information going to each speaker, but there's 2 on each side and 2 in the back, and then ones in the back, those are wired in series too. Those are not 2 individual channels back there. So it's definitely a completely different thing, and it's meant for home theater, and it's meant for this really, really super high-end stuff. I'm sure it sounds great. I'm sure it'll blow you away. I'm sure it sounds better than going to a regular, to an actual, actual theater. I'm sure it would sound better than that, but it's just not something I'm interested in. Rob.
Yeah, I mean, one other interesting thing is that they very clearly mentioned that, yes, there is Atmos support. It's an upgrade. What is it, $130,000 extra?
Yeah, $130,000 on top of the $380 or whatever it is that you pay.
I think. Because I remember, it's $470,000 altogether to get their Atmos system. Now, that does include acoustic treatments in there, and it does include the processor, and of course the amplification is all built into the speakers themselves, and it does come with 4 subwoofers, which are also wall mountable, it looks like.
Yeah, I hope so, because they're just awful.
One in each corner is what they're going for there. But so all of this stuff is coming together for an insanely high price tag, but no Oro 3D support. No mention of that. So there's another one, even at this price point. They ain't doing it. But here's my reason why I would never opt for this system, and it's very simple. Proprietary speaker connections. I hate proprietary speaker connections.
No, I thought it was just it's Cat 5. It's got, or is it got a proprietary connection?
But show me what other AV processors use that connection.
Oh, yeah.
Speakers. Right? I mean, this is essentially saying you have to use these speakers with their processor. That makes sense. I mean, it's all coming together in one package system, but if you ever wanted to upgrade your processor to something that isn't from Grimani Systems, maybe there's some form, maybe Oro 3D, maybe that's what you want. Well, too bad. You can't use it with these speakers. It's all or nothing. So that would be my main reason for never doing this. I want the ability to upgrade things, but of course that isn't the normal. That's not the market they're going after. This is a all-in-one solution. This is someone who says, "I have $2 million and make sure you spend every penny of it and more." So
I have to correct myself. I just looked at the thing. The 2 rear speakers are independent channels.
Right. Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, I was wrong about that. I misremembered that. All right, so we will give you some links for you guys to go look at these high-end plasticky speakers that go behind stuff. I actually have no problems with them being. I know it sounds funny, but if they're going to go behind a wall or behind a scrim or something like that, I don't really care what you make them out of, as long as whatever it is the appropriate material. So if it's plastic, it's plastic. As long as they've braced it correctly, it doesn't bother me that much. I'm not going to see it anyways. But I mean, I would hope. For I don't know, for $400,000, I would hope they were all made of like military grade aluminum.
Those JBL M2, they're highest end, they're professional studio monitors with their new waveguide. I mean, hey, that waveguide's plastic too. They say so. They just damp the heck out of it with some kind of polymer material or something like that, just to tap it out of there. So yeah. That's fine.
So Gary also read through a short article on CEDIA.org about ultra widescreen 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio setups, but he took issue with the claim that an anamorphic lens is a key ingredient, and that 2.35 to 1 screen sizes start around 100 inches and only go up from there. Gary thinks there's plenty of value in applications for smaller than 100-inch screen sizes and setups without an anamorphic lens while keeping the wider aspect ratio screen. What are our opinions? Rob and I disagree on this. Okay, so let's just go. There's 2 ways to get your 2.35 to 1. Most movies or all TV these days, it's all 16:9. Okay, that's the aspect ratio. That's widescrreen. Okay, 4:3 is your normal old TV CRT. Then 16:9 is widescreen, and then they've got a bunch of other ones that come out. But 2.35 to 1 is where movies kind of tend to go these days because they suck. Just pick one and stick with it, I think is what we should do, but they don't want to do that. So there's 2 ways to get this. One, you can have your projector or whatever it is put out, with the black bars on the top and the bottom, 2.35 to 1, and then zoom it in or zoom it out so that it fills up the screen, and the black bars are now being covered by some sort of masking that's either motorized or that you add there, so that you're getting the 2.35 to 1 and you're zooming in and out based on that. The other way to do it is to have your projector put it out in its native format. Let's just say it's 16:9. So in the native format, be 16:9, and then so that makes everybody squished and tall. Well, then you put an anamorphic lens in front of it, and it optically changes that squished and tall person to now 2.35 to 1. Now they look normal again. The problem being that there's some processing going on there, so you may have some artifacts. The upside is that you are now using every bit of light that you can get out of your projector.
Mm-hmm.
There's no black bars. There's no wasted pixels. You're getting all of it, okay? And it's being transformed by the lens, which of course can't add artifacts because it's a lens. It's not adding artifacts, it's just stretching. As long as it's not got some sort of imperfection in the lens or something like that, it will just stretch it the way it's supposed to, and that'll be the end of that. Now, That's the difference. Those are the two ways of really kind of enjoying your 2.35 to 1. Either you got to deal with the black bars and less light and having to zoom or put some masking on, zoom and put some masking on, or you can do the anamorphic thing. You still have to have the masking or a screen that's the right aspect ratio. But you're using every bit of your light, but then there's the processing issue, and it gets stretched optically. I have experienced... Well, obviously, I've experienced the one with the black bars every time I've ever seen anything, because I don't have an anamorphic lens. And I've never thought to myself, oh, I'm missing all this brightness. I've never thought that. I just haven't. That said, I have also experienced the anamorphic lenses. I've seen it all squished, because what happens is the picture comes on. This is usually at CEDIA or something like that, or CES. The picture comes on, everybody will be squished and tall, and then you can hear the zzz as the anamorphic lens starts to slide into place, because it's all motorized, because it's usually a Wolf or one of those massive, $500,000 projectors. And zzz, and here comes the anamorphic lens, and the anamorphic lens goes on top all of a sudden. Ta-da! And I've never thought when I saw something like that, oh, wow, look at all that distortion and processing that happens.
Shouldn't, yeah.
Yeah. So... I don't think that, honestly, if it were me and I was going to have my own theater, and I would go with anamorphic, lens. Yeah. That's what I would do. I know Rod doesn't agree with that, but I would.
Nope.
I think that it's you end up with more light. You end up with you get all your contrast. For me. I think that I think that's probably what I would opt with. The screen size is starting around 100 inches and only going up from there. That was a throwaway line in there that they kind of said that that's generally where they start. I don't know why he was getting all bent out of shape about that.
Because he has a 92-inch screen. That's why.
Dude, don't. Jeez, don't worry about it. It's fine. You got 92. That's fine. Go with 90. You don't have
that is around 100 inches.
Yeah, that's around 100. So is 80.
Yeah, that's around 100.
80's around 100 too. So don't worry about it. You can have anamorphic smaller than 100 inches. If you're looking for permission, you have my permission.
Yes, we do have that slight disagreement, because I just think that the anamorphic lens setup is needlessly complicated. I don't think it's necessary to get what you're going after. I mean, what you're going after here is what's traditionally called a constant image height setup, where your 16:9 content, the stuff you'll be watching from HD TV, or those movies that are shot in 16:9 or close to 16:9. There's another format that's 1.85 to 1, which is a little tiny bit wider than 16:9, but barely so. So the things that are shot in that aspect, they're supposed to be the same height as things that are shot in the wider 2.35 to 1. So normally, if you're just watching it on your regular HD TV, your 2.35 to 1 content is wider, but it's shorter because you have the black bars on the top and bottom. So I do like the idea of constant image height, but you can get that by just zooming in your projector. And these days, I mean, this Epson laser projector, the JVC, DILA projectors, the Sony SXRD projectors, the black that they produce is very, very close to a true black. And having those black bars projected slightly above and below your screen, to me, it's just not a big deal. Like, there was a time when projectors didn't have those kinds of black levels. They didn't have that kind of contrast. There was a time when they couldn't produce enough light, so using the entire panel was a bigger deal. But these days, man, I just wouldn't worry about it. To me,
well, you're gonna love that new Epson projector, because they have like 10 presets where you can set the zoom level
and a lot of zoom range too.
Yeah, it's a nice projector. It's on my wish list.
My last thought on it is that I don't actually like using a 2.35 to 1 screen, a screen that is fixed in that aspect ratio, because of those slight handful of movies, including IMAX features, that are supposed to be not only that wide, but also even taller. So, movies like The Dark Knight, Tron Legacy, things like that, where portions of it were shot in IMAX, most of the movie is supposed to be the 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio, but then some of those scenes, Hunger Games does this too, Transformers Age of Extinction does it as well, they get taller. They get even taller. And I don't want that part of the image being projected above and below the screen, I would like to see the full image, please. So I like the idea of a really huge 16 by 9 screen. And then either having 4-way masking or a second smaller 16 by 9 screen that can be used for actual 16 by 9
I think
content.
we should all agree that we should just make them all agree on a aspect ratio, and that's it. That's what I think we should do.
We can't even get between 4K and ultra high definition because movies have to be 4096 pixels wide and ultra high definition has to be 3840 pixels wide. Yes, we could not even agree on that.
Yeah. All right, Kevin L. wants to rebuild his 5.1 home theater system. He wants to make sure he maximizes his bang for his buck with each individual purchase. So start with his theater is 25 foot by 25 foot basement room. We don't like squares. Squares are bad for acoustics, but you're stuck.
It's not the end of the world.
Could be worse. And he would also be using headphones with a lot with this system. I wonder about that. Maybe he just likes headphones. I don't know, but that's kind of weird to me.
I like headphones.
I like headphones too, but I don't use them in my home theater. I use my home theater in my home theater. Right now, he owns a Yamaha RXV 473 that's discontinued. I looked it up. It's a 5.1 80 watt per channel AV receiver. It's got 4K pass-through and stuff like that. It's I think it was initially around a $450, $500 receiver that was for sale. He mostly bought this for its silent cinema headphone mode, which Rob had to inform me allowed you to use some sort of Yamaha DSP to get pseudo surround through your headphones.
Yeah, with most AV receivers, if you plug in headphones to the headphone jack, they'll usually only give you 1 or maybe 2 listening modes. Usually it's just stereo. That's the only listening mode you can use when plugging in headphones. You might have something like Dolby Headphone or DTS Headphone X available to you. With Yamaha's Silent Cinema, they let you select just a regular, Dolby Digital or Dolby Pro Logic or DTS Neo 6 or whatever. You can just select the normal listening mode that you would use with speakers as well, and then Yamaha's doing their own DSP processing to output that through the headphone jack instead. So that's what Silent Cinema is.
Yeah, I never would have guessed that from the name Silent Cinema. It just makes no sense, but whatever. For speakers, he's got JBL Northridge E90 towers. He's also got JBL S Center 2. Does he have 2 of them? Is that why that?
No, that's the model name. It's called the S Center 2.
Okay. Would you like? Okay. Anyways, he would like to gradually complete a 5.1 speaker setup. He's willing to replace what he already has if it will make the largest difference for the money spent. So, what do we recommend? Well, you don't have a TV according to this list. So I imagine you are having a hard time seeing things. So if you don't have a TV, I would recommend getting a TV. But the other thing you did not list on this list is a subwoofer. So, drum roll, please. What do you think we're going to recommend? Okay, I looked up your Yamaha. It's a capable receiver. I don't really see anything real wrong with it. It's a fairly large room, but 80 watts per channel. Those are going to be 8-ohm speakers. Are probably going to be fairly easy to drive. I'm sure they get loud enough, so I'm not worried there.
The JBL speakers that he has right now are fairly efficient. They're 8-ohm speakers, 91 dB per watt per meter. So, they shouldn't be too bad even given that room size. It's not a huge concern there.
Yeah. I looked up some reviews on the speakers themselves. They seem to get favorable reviews, especially for the price. I think the speakers cost around the same. Each speaker costs around the same as about his receiver, so he's definitely put some money into his speakers. The center looks not to be of the same line, but
right.
The design looks okay to me. It's similar to the design for the Northridge center channel. It has the tweeter above the mid-range and 2 woofers to either side, so it's a similar design. So as long as you're happy there, he didn't mention having any surrounds. He seems to be kind of okay with that. If he's listening to a lot of headphone stuff, then maybe he doesn't really need that. The number one thing that's going to make a difference, as long as you have a TV, I think is going to be a subwoofer. That's what's going to take or two. That's going to take your listening experience from being one of, hey, this, I kind of prefer my headphones most of the time, to Oh, this is why people have home theaters. Because you can't get that subwoofer experience with the headphones. Even with the Oppo headphones, the planar magnetic ones, which I'm going to talk about hopefully before the end of the podcast. Even with those, and the great bass they have, you cannot get that bass, that tactile bass that you can get from a good sub. All right. Now, notice I didn't mention anything about surrounds. You didn't mention anything about surrounds. I assume you don't have any surrounds. Well, if you don't have any surrounds and you think that you're going to be upgrading your speakers at some point, I would kind of wait to figure out what you're going to do with your speakers. I would certainly say that if you're looking for your most bang for your buck, upgrade, the subwoofer is going to. You can get a fairly cheap subwoofer from HSU, Outlaw. SVS, get one of those. You're going to certainly see a huge change in what you experience from your headphones. Next, of course, would be surrounds, but only if you're confident that you're going to keep those JBL speakers. If you're happy with them, well, then keep them. There's no reason to upgrade.
Yeah, when you're talking bang for your buck, the things that are easily going to make the most audible difference are adding the subwoofers first, and then the speakers. Now, looking at those JBL speakers, there's nothing there where I'm saying, oh yes, you must replace those. Absolutely not. If you are happy with the sound of those, you can totally keep those, and you could look at whatever JBL surround speakers will tonally match to the speakers that you already have. So there's nothing saying you need to. This would be if you want to. If you want to, you could, and therefore I wouldn't go buying your surround speakers until you've decided what you're going to do, front speaker wise. But yeah, absolutely the subs. I would totally second that, especially the Outlaw recommendation, because they have their LFM1 Plus, which frequently goes on sale for about $500. So just looking at the other equipment he's purchased, I'm thinking that probably falls within about.
Yeah, it seems to be his. That's where he likes to buy things at, around the $500 range.
Yeah, so I think that would be a really stellar choice. It would transform your system. It would also help, just given the size of your room and using your front speakers, because I imagine right now you're having all the bass played out of those E90 towers, and that's placing, a little bit more strain on that 80 watt per channel Yamaha receiver that you've got right now. You will alleviate that because you'll be able to cross them over to the subwoofer. So that is easily the first purchase. Now, the other thing that never came up was acoustic treatments, because he did mention he doesn't really have any, and he's got this large room, and it could be reflective. It's just drywall, and it's in a basement, so there's probably some concrete in there too.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to say where that's going to fall on the bang for buck line. I would say, first of all, get the subwoofer. Second of all, decide what you're going to do with the speakers. Those are easily your bang for your buck. Then I would seriously look at acoustic treatments after those two decisions.
Because you're going to find once you get those subwoofers in there, especially with a square. I mean, I'm sure it's not a 25-foot high room. It's not a cube, but with a square room like that, you're going to have some bass issues. So you get a sub, and if you can't get a second sub, and then figure out what you can do with your speakers, and then acoustic treatments. I think that's good. That's a good plan.
Yeah,
it's a good plan. And remember, you can make the acoustic treatments. You don't have to buy them. Though these days it's almost cheaper to buy them than make them. But if you've got the tools, it's kind of fun to make.
I think we helped.
All right. I don't know. We'll find out. Michael M. says that we did help. He started off by saying how our advice on the podcast really helped him out while he was helping a friend set up a speaker system. First, they were faced with the AV receiver shutting off whenever they started playing something. And after hearing us say it about 3 billion times, it turned out to be a loose speaker wire connection. And then when when you figured that out and you started playing stuff, the new SVS cylinder sub they were setting up wasn't putting out very much bass at all. Turned out the crossovers had been set to 40 hertz, which is one of the first things we say when you're setting up a subwoofer, so check your crossover. So Michael wants to know why manually setting the speakers to small and manually setting the subwoofer to on still resulted in the crossovers initially being set to 40 hertz. I'm assuming he ran some sort of auto setup routine and then changed it. Is that what I'm... Should I assume that?
I don't entirely know. From the way he described it, because he said they had a pretty limited time setting things up, it sounds as though they just hooked everything up, started playing things, and then said, why doesn't this sound right? And then just check the manual settings. It doesn't sound like they ever ran.
I can't honestly believe that out of the box that it was set 40 hertz.
Yeah, because the default is almost always 80.
It's
I'm just thinking that It
I
didn't
think it's
have a
usually 80
subwoofer
or
before.
higher. I think I've seen some come out at 120 default, which is stupid, but uh, yeah, it's certainly better than 40.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if this was used or if maybe somebody had played with the settings at some point. But yeah, it shouldn't have. The default is almost always 80. So
Mm-hmm.
if you ran something first and it set it to 40, well, then it's
Right.
because whatever program you were using decided that 40 hertz is how low those speakers could play and set it there because it's stupid. That's why we have to check these things. Um,
Yeah. Why do they do it? Because there is a whole contingent of people out there who think that the best way for their speakers to be set up is to have their speakers play as low as they possibly can. There is a huge contingent of people out there who say, I bought tower speakers and I want them to play as low as those speakers can play. And we've explained a gazillion times at this point why we don't agree with that notion at all. But nevertheless, there is that contingent of people out there. So I think that's the why of why manufacturers still do things that way.
right. So, the other thing he wanted to know is after he got all the settings adjusted, DVDs, Blu-rays, and CDs all sounded great with deep, full bass, but his friend's vinyl records sounded thin and hollow with weak bass. Why is this the case? My guess is that you did not connect it up to a dedicated phono input, okay? Or if you did, you had the setting on it wrong. Basically, think about it this way: if you recorded everything on a record, on a vinyl, a gramophone type record, if you recorded everything flat, the bass would take up so much of the groove that it would obscure all the treble and mid-range. Not only that, it might bounce, if it was enough, it might bounce the needle out of the groove, okay? Which would be bad. So the RIAA put together a curve, and this curve prevents those lower notes from taking up a lot of space and the high notes disappearing, okay? And what a phono preamp is supposed to do is it's supposed to know what that curve is, and it boosts the bass so that it's now back to what it was originally recorded as. So some record players will have like a phono preamp already built into it, and when it does is it has that curve already built into it, so that the preamp will then make that correction before it comes out. If you're hearing thin or hollow bass, that's not happening. You can correct this by either finding a phono input on that AV receiver. If it doesn't have one, then there's a number of different like standalone phono preamps, but there's one from Emotiva which probably has an X, S, or P someplace in its name.
I'm sure it's XPS because that would be, or no, Phono XPA, Phono preamp.
Yeah, we'll see.
Phono,
Anyways, it's one of those. So go look on the Emotiva website. It's a little box thing that's needlessly complicated, but it's a little box thing where you plug it in on one side and then it does a little correction that comes out the other side. So, or you can search around and find one, but you'll have to get a dedicated phono preamp in order for it to sound correct.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah, okay, good.
We better roll along, or else we're going to end up going over 2 hours when we thought we didn't have that many topics.
Yeah, Bruno, last week we discussed the size and dimension of his room along with some thoughts on seating position, screen size, and subwoofer placement, but he forgot to mention that his wife intends to hang a lighting fixture right in the middle of his 8-foot, 8-inch ceiling. Of course, that would be right in the light path of a ceiling-mounted projector, and apparently removing the hanging light or putting a short throw projector in front of the light is not up for debate. So Bruno is wondering about ultra short throw projectors that can position right up at the front of the room with a budget of around $5,000 maximum. Are there any good short throw projector options? And do we have any other advice regarding projector setup in light of this information? So basically, he wants to put this projector at the back of the room. His wife wants to put some sort of light fixture in the middle of the room because she wants to see, and I guess can lights or something recessed is not there, and then he's afraid he's going to run into it. Well, Bruno, first of all, ultra short throw home theater quality projectors at $5,000 I do not think exist. Ultra short throw is generally reserved for like schools and businesses and stuff, and they're not meant to look good. They're meant to look bright. So I don't think that exists. But that being said, in my room's what? I can't remember how long my room is. It's like 17 feet, I think 17 and a half to 18 feet or something like that. In the middle of my room is a ceiling fan. It's not a big ceiling fan. It's not a small ceiling fan. It's a normal ceiling fan, okay? And my projector sits about 12 to 16 inches off the ceiling, okay? And I project to my projection screen, and the ceiling fan in no way gets in the way. The ceiling fan has a light on top of it, on the bottom of it, or whatever you want to think about that. Normal size light, it's fine. No problems. I think you're not going to have a problem with the projector. You just move your screen down a little bit, and you'll be just fine. I don't think this is an issue.
Yeah, there are a few things, because, I mean, we don't know exactly how low this lighting fixture is hanging. I would assume it's hanging at least high enough that you can walk under it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be like you're going to put a table underneath it and have, like, dinner there sometimes, right?
Right, yeah. I would hope not. That would be very strange for a dedicated theater room. But as far as the ultra-short throw projectors go, I mean, Sony at CEDIA, they did announce theirs. It's $50,000. And then I remember LG announced one it was at least a year ago, if not farther back. I think that was about $27,000 or $30,000. So, they're up in those kind of price ranges. There are the ones that, like Tom says, they're for the business side of things. So I really haven't seen home theater ones, so I wouldn't go that way. Now, there's a bunch of different ways to position your projector. It only has to be high enough to clear your head when you're sitting down. I mean, that's how high the projector needs to be. So you have some options here. You could set up a stand basically directly behind your seats. I know he has his entranceway doors are his back wall, so he's not going to be putting it on a shelf physically on the back wall, but he could have a stand right behind his seat. They make lifts. You could have something that looks like a nice table behind you that actually has a projector lift built into it. So if this is an aesthetics thing and your wife doesn't want to see that projector, you could actually have a motorized lift that lifts up the projector into position while you're watching and then drops it back down behind you. Poof, it's gone. Like Tom says, as long as that hanging light fixture isn't incredibly low, you could still just hang a projector from the back of the room and probably have enough clearance. You could also move it over to the side. You could have it sort of beside the light fixture, because there are plenty of very good projectors that have horizontal lens shift. The ones from Epson, the ones from Sony, they have that. The ones from JVC do as well. And the last resort, and it's not really a terrible last resort, is you could have a coffee table in front of your seating and have the projector either sort of, in that or on top of that. Or again, you could have one that actually lifts. You could have one where it's a coffee table and the projector just lifts out of it when it's time to watch a movie, and therefore would be in front of you. So there are plenty of ways to get around this. I'm a little unsure of why that hanging light fixture must be in a dedicated theater room, but nevertheless, we will leave that alone. I'm not going to disturb that hornet's nest, potentially. But there should be a solution here other than a very expensive
As long as it's not some sort of weird, really low-hanging chandelier, you're not going to have an issue, dude. I've got a ceiling fan, and I didn't even try to I didn't even think about it. I was just like, I'll just keep the screen low, Just get the screen a little bit lower to the ground. You're firing down underneath that thing. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. All right. There you go. Cameron. Okay. Cameron says that he keeps the doors to his home theater room shut but not latched. What does that mean, not latched?
I don't think these ones have a traditional handle with a latch, because he mentioned that there is a latch for the door, but it's basically at the top of the door, so it's kind of a manual latch. So I think these are just kind of free swinging, maybe sort of French door style, or almost the way a closet door is, something like that. That seems to be what it is.
So there's no opening, but the doors can swing freely. Because it sounds like one of those saloon things.
It didn't look like that. He did. I forgot to put the picture in the email, but it didn't look like that. It just sort of looked like a French door that's basically just on a hinge instead of having a latch on it.
That's weird. So when he gets a big SVS subwoofer, is it possible it could cause enough air movement that it might open and slap the door shut? Could this actually be a problem? If you manage to do that, I bet SVS would come there and take movies of it just to prove that it can be done, because that would be awesome. You're not gonna, dude. If you could move that much air, that's not going to happen. That would be a problem for you to be breathing, I think, in the same room as that. It's like every time the subwoofer hits, it like sucks air out of your lungs, like as the sub goes in and out the entire time. I'm hyperventilating because it's.
Well, that might be my fault because I did talk about, physically bowing out the left wall of my room. That is more of a room construction problem than a subwoofer actually playing. I mean, when I talk about that, it is small. It's vibrating that wall because it's not a very well constructed.
Yeah, it's not like when Neo in the Matrix flexes in the room fish eyes. Nothing like that. This is not going to be an issue. It may vibrate. In fact,
yes, a rattle is entirely possible.
In fact, that's not the only thing that's going to be vibrating, so that's not going to be your biggest problem. Your biggest problem is all the other stuff that's going to be vibrating in your house. Just like our friend with the white white cover on his SVS sub that now has to go around and putty things down because of that. And just like I had to go through my room and my doors that were closing in here, they were all vibrating. I took a little bit of that rubber insulation tape and fixed that up. I mean, it's just, vibrations are going to be an issue. It's a good issue. Cameron also posted on Facebook that his speakers have dual sets of binding posts for bi-amping, and the included middle jumpers are very thin and flimsy. He read on the forum. Nothing good ever happens.
Aww,
that's not true. That's not true. I like forums just fine. They're a great source of entertainment. He read on a forum a while back that replacing the jumpers with speaker wire is a good idea. Why would it be a good idea? If they're broken, it's a great idea. If they're not broken, then it's not an issue. He's also seen some AudioQuest silver and gold jumpers on Amazon for about $25 for a pack of 4. Should he give AudioQuest jumpers a try without using speaker wire? Okay, first of all, if you're going to spend $25 for a pack of 4 on AudioQuest jumpers, send me $20, and you can keep the $5 as a lesson learned. If you absolutely have to do this, just cut a little bit of speaker wire and do it that way. That's fine. I don't know why, but you can. If they are working, it is either they work or they do not. There's not going to be like it kind of sort of works. Either that electrical connection is made or that electrical connection is not made. There is no in between with this. Okay, so if your woofers are playing and your tweeters are playing, you're fine. That's all you have to worry about. So. No.
Yes, we're talking about a distance of, I don't know, an inch and a half.
Yeah,
You could use very, very thin speaker wire, and it would make that connection just fine without the resistance of the wire being any concern whatsoever. So, I mean, yes, these jumpers that you have, maybe they're a little bit thin, maybe they're a little bit flimsy seeming. I guarantee you there's still as much copper in there, or at least, electrically conductive material, that it's more than, I don't know, what, a 28 gauge wire, which, I mean, even that would be more than sufficient.
Yeah,
so, all we're worried about is the electrical connection. If you hear a difference, it's a placebo effect. So.
It's definitely a placebo effect. And people on forums say a lot of things are good ideas, and that's just because they want... I honestly think that people get sort of a kick out of other people taking their advice. I know that seems weird, me saying that on this podcast, and I guess I do too, obviously. But on forums, people say stuff just hoping that you'll do it, just because then they feel important, and that's fine. But this is not something that you need to do. It will make no sonic or audible or electrical difference. There's no reason to do it. You could do it, but there's no reason to do it. As long as it's working, it's fine. It's
if you somehow lost those jumpers, you would absolutely, in a heartbeat, use a piece of speaker wire.
That's what I would do.
Totally.
Absolutely, that's what I would do. I would take a little piece of speaker wire, and I would connect the two, and that would be the end of it.
But one of the fun things you can do sometimes is, open up a speaker, even some very expensive speakers, and then see the gauge of wire that's used to wire things internally. And you might be shocked at how skinny that stuff is, but that's fine. It's fine because you're talking about very, very short distances. So, yeah.
All right. And last but not least, Sim is helping a friend of his plan out the construction of his home theater. The room looks to be about 14 feet wide by about 19 and a half feet long. The main entrance, okay, and this is going to be a little confusing here, so try to stay with me, guys. We'll post on Facebook, and then do we do this? Do we just do this on Facebook, or are we going to post this on the Anyways, we'll post a link on the AV Rant page eventually. The main entrance is a pair of bifold doors on the back wall. It takes up most of the back wall. But there are also two other doorways on the left side of the theater. One right in front of the left front corner of the room, and another just forward of the rear left corner of the room. His electrician is coming this week to run all the wires. And Sim is trying to figure out where exactly the subwoofers will go. He's thinking that 4 subwoofers, one in each corner of the room, is the best option. But because of the one doorway that's right in front of the left front corner of the room, the subwoofers at the front of the room, if they were to be matching, would have to be 3 feet away from the front wall. Would this placement cause any problems in the uniformity and quality of the bass? Do we have any other suggestions where the subwoofers could be positioned? Okay, so the idea here is that there's a door at the front left of the room, on the front left wall of the room. Now, on the left wall, near the front of the room, right near the front of the room, there is a door there. Okay, so in order to, because where the door is placed, the subwoofer in the front left corner would have to be 3 feet into the room, away from this door, in order for the door to open and stuff like that. Okay. So if he did that, then he'd want the one on the right front corner to be matching that. That's not really the one you have to match. The one you have to match is the one in the back right corner. Front left, back right. Those are the ones that have to match. Okay. Second thing is really this room is 14 by 19. Okay, or 19 and a half. This is not a huge room. Do you want 4 subwoofers? Hell yeah, I want 4 subwoofers. Do you need 4 subwoofers? No, you do not need 4 subwoofers in this room. It would be great to have 4 subwoofers. And if you want to wire for 4 subwoofers, wire for 4. In fact, you should wire all 4 corners and midpoints of all 4 walls, just in case. Okay? So in case you change the layout of this place. All right? Hell, put one wire right in the middle of the room so you can use one as a coffee table if you really feel like it. I don't know. But if it were me, okay, first of all, that left front corner being the problem, forget it. Use the right front corner for your first sub, the left back corner, which doesn't have this issue with placement, as your second sub, and stop. That would be it. I would have 2 subs diagonally across from each other in the right front corner and the left back corner, and that would be it. You'd have nice even bass. Wouldn't be quite as even as if you had all 4 of them. It'd probably be just great, it'd be fantastic and non-localizable. And you, with spending $500, $600, $700 a sub, you're going to have output well below 20 hertz, and just go on with your bad self. That's my suggestion. Rob.
Yep. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add with that. I was looking at the layouts. It looks as though the plan is to have basically a 3-seater sofa with some room behind it so that those bifold doors can open as the entrance, and then 2 other chairs forward of that sofa and on the outsides. Now, those 2 extra chairs appear to be, at least in the plans, more or less right at the midpoint of the room. There's probably enough space that you could actually put a subwoofer right behind those seats, especially if it's a cylinder subwoofer that has a smaller footprint. You could probably put them right at the midpoints of each side wall, more or less right beside those 2 extra chairs. So, like Tom said, if you got the walls open and you're just running wires, I mean, why not? All 4 corners, the midpoints of all the walls. Why the heck not? But yeah, I completely agree with Tom's advice there. I don't really have anything else to add on that one.
I will say that, and when you guys see these pictures that we'll post on Facebook or wherever, I think that if you've drawn this to scale, which you seem to have because there's lots of numbers, that the surround placements are too far forward of the couch, and the couch, I think the surrounds are placed properly. I think that your couch needs to move forward. Your couch is too far back. Your couch is too close to the back wall. I think it needs to be about a third of the way into the room. Generally speaking, that's where I want to put it, and it seems to be too far back, and the surrounds are too far forward. So your surrounds are in front of what I imagine is going to be the prime, which is going to be the main listening area. I would push that forward. If it's because you put it that far back because of how big the screen is, consider getting a smaller screen, or consider the fact that you probably will be just fine sitting a little bit closer to however big that screen's going to be.
Yeah, I did notice what he's got proposals for where the front left and right speakers would go as well, and those are very wide apart.
Yeah, they're way over in the
Um,
corners.
yeah, and so again, I'm thinking that the idea was that they had a screen size in mind, and that ended up dictating how far away the seat is and how wide apart those front left and wide speakers are. So I'm in agreement there. If you can move that seat a little bit closer and end up with a smaller screen, perceptually it's not going to be any smaller. In fact, there's lots of benefits to having a slightly smaller screen size, including the image is going to be brighter coming out of whatever projector you're using. So yep, I like that suggestion too.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're going to end up finding that you can pull those speakers forward and move them in a little bit
Mm-hmm.
based on just how the light is coming to your screen. You have more leeway than you think. It doesn't have to be outside the screen. Those people who are sitting in those side chairs are going to hate it anyways because those side chairs are way too close to the walls. But we'll see how it actually lays out. But it looks that's the way just the way kind of eyeballing it looks to me. It looks like that couch needs to move in or those surrounds need to move back in some way. So I guess he's just playing on 5.1, right? I don't see anything.
Oh no, it looked actually it kind of looked like he's going for an Atmos setup. I think there was some in the
Is that? I
ceiling.
thought those were lights. Those are not lights. Those are Atmos
There's one
things?
that's light and there's one that's speakers. There's three different drawings. I mean, they're just handmade drawings. There's three different ones. One is sort of the layout of the room. One is where all the speakers are going, and then one is where the lighting is going.
Yeah,
So in
the
the
left front and
speaker
the right
one,
front have to move up and out. Maybe they're supposed to be on wall. Maybe they're supposed to be behind the screen. I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah, left front wide. There it is.
yeah.
Front right center. Oh, he looks like he's got front right center, front left center, back left center, back right center. Yeah, I think that it does look like the couch needs to move. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what he ends up with. All right, so that's that. All right, anything else?
No, just your Oppo PM-2 headphones.
Okay, yeah. So last week after our podcast, one of our listeners, Cameron, had joined us for the hangout and asked me if I would recommend the Oppo PM-2. So the PM-2s are the planar magnetic headphones from Oppo. They are the follow-up to the PM-1s. PM-1s are what, like $1,300? Is that right? 13?
They're up around there, yeah.
Yeah, $1,300. These are, I think, $699 or $700. They're a little bit more than half. But I was kind of shocked when I got them. I think I mentioned on the podcast. They look exactly the same. They have the same driver. If you look at the list of things that are different between one and the other, it's all cosmetic. And that does seem to be the case. I've spent a lot of time listening to them lately. I absolutely love these headphones. And Cameron asked me if I could recommend them. And I have a hard time when I have a high-dollar item like this where I haven't listened to a lot of stuff in the same price range, a $700 price range for a headphone. But I think, as I've been reading other reviews of people who have listened to other stuff, the kind of the universal constant of these things is that the bass is very uniform and very deep, and the top end is a little bit rolled off. And that's the way I kind of felt about the PM1s, and I haven't changed my opinion with the PM2s. They don't sound any different to me. Somebody did a review, kind of a review, when they did a bunch of measurements of the different ear cup pads, ear pad things that, and they showed slight differences between one and the other, which I think is all measurement error. That's what I think. I'm sure they don't agree. I'm sure they think that they are convinced that's not true, but that's what I think. I think it's all measurement error. But for me, they just sound really, really good. And I was looking into other planar magnetic headphones and how much they cost, and really nothing can really touch the price point of these things. So if you are on the market for planar magnetic headphones and you are not, and you're looking for a headphone, or you're looking for a headphone that's just, I mean, first of all, it's planar magnetic, so you kind of think that it's going to need some sort of, external amplifier. It doesn't. I mean, Oppo will sell you one for sure. It doesn't need it. You can plug it directly into your phone and get plenty of volume out of it. They are super comfortable. They have great bass. The fact that they have a little roll-off on the top end, you might think of that as a negative. I think of it as a positive in a lot of ways because it goes from, yeah, okay, they're not quite as revealing as they could be on some really high-end material, but you give that up, and then you get the ability to listen to everything that you own and enjoy it. Because anything that does have a harsh high end because of poor recording or poor compression, that stuff gets sort of tamed enough that you're not having to deal, that you're able to enjoy it. So I am going to.
There are such things as EQs as well.
There are.
Particularly in your phone, you can just do a little treble boost if it really bothers you. So.
If it does, yeah. And honestly, I am going to go back and say that I am going to recommend these. Now, there is I found a local dealer in town for Audyssey, the other main. Is that what the name of the company is? Audyssey, right?
Everyone calls it Audyssey.
Audyssey?
So Odyssey.
Whatever.
Kind of sounds like Odyssey, unfortunately.
That's what I needed. Something else that sounds like Audacity, Odyssey, Audyssey. Yeah, that's great. That'll work out for me and my Vicodin. So I found a local dealer. Right now I can't drive because of the Vicodin and the fact that my right knee is still completely jacked up. But when they're over in Clearwater, but they're only by appointment. But I'm going to try to take my headphones over to them and listen and compare them to these Audyssey headphones, A/B comparison with them, and see if I can find out, for sure how I feel about these two different types of headphones and whether or not that price is really. But really, it's hard for me not to recommend them because they do sound so good. They are so comfortable, and the fact of the matter is that you're getting exactly what you could pay $1,300 for, except instead of metal, you're getting plastic, and instead of lamb skin, you're getting, pleather. Like, such an easy trade-off for me. So I do not need chrome. Give me chrome-colored plastic. Thank you. So,
the PM1s aren't quite that expensive. They're $1,100 or $1,099. That's the PM1s, and at that price point, they definitely do have competition. The Audyssey LCD2s are about $1,000 as well. So those compete, but the Audyssey LCD2s are much harder to drive. They're not nearly as efficient a headphone. Audyssey's more efficient headphones are the LCDX, and those are up in the $1,700 price range. So the fact that Oppo has these PM2s at $700, I don't know if there are planar magnetics that are also efficient. So you don't really require a separate headphone amplifier. I don't know if there's anything at that same price point.
Yeah, it's kind of insane.
Yeah.
The only thing that really just drives me crazy is that they only included a 1 meter cable for the 3.5 plug. It just drives me crazy that they did that. And the carrying case is just lame. It's denim. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. But just really good headphones. Really impressed with them. So hopefully, they call the 1.5 meter cable, they call it sport or something, or I don't know, they call it something like that. It's not they don't call it. I guess they assume that you're gonna use it with the 1/4-inch plug instead, but I don't. So now to sit close to everything. But I've been using them like crazy, and I absolutely love them. So I'm looking forward to what everybody else thinks when they start getting their hands on them. All right, anything else?
I think that's it. Do you have any recommendations? Do you want to do any?
I just did a recommendation. PM2 headphones from Oppo.
I could embarrass myself with a recommendation. Should I do that?
Is it something about dancing? Because I'm sure it's going to be something about dancing.
Well, almost. I'm very sad. So You Think You Can Dance has not yet been renewed for their 12th season. We're waiting, fingers crossed.
Yes, we are. Look at me with my fingers.
I'm worried, but yeah, no, I may as well recommend a show because my niece just had her birthday. And so she has discovered My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, that show, and she absolutely loves that and wanted a whole bunch of My Little Ponies. So in order to be able to converse with her about these characters, I watched a few episodes of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. It's kind of really good.
You're a brony! You're a brony!
I know.
God!
Technically, I am. I kind of like that show. It's legitimately funny, dude.
Oh, God.
I'm not going to any conventions. I'm not that much of a fan.
Not yet.
No, I don't go to even like Comic Cons, so I would,
Rob,
if I were going to go anywhere. But yeah, so why not? That's where my tastes lean now. There you go.
So our 400th episode, the title will be Rob's a Brony. Is that what
there
we're
you
going?
go. All right. Seriously, if you have some kids, there are kids shows that you can happily watch along with them, and then there are ones that will make you grate your teeth because they're so awful. This falls into the former category. You could totally watch this as an adult and be like, that's actually legit entertaining. So I recommend that.
Okay. I'm going to stop this now. All right, you can contact Rob and tell him why he's so wrong about being a Bronie at rob@avrant.com. You can contact me at tom@avrant.com. Come to the website, avrant.com, and comment, or facebook.com/avrantpodcast. Please send us all your questions, specifically if you have any Odyssey questions or home integration, home theater PC questions, stuff like that. Send that to us so that for our upcoming interviews, which will be happening hopefully soon. Twitter, Rob's at FirstReflect, and I am at avrant_Tom. All right. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Mandry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
All right, gentlemen, and the hangout will be starting in 10 minutes or so. Later.